Okay, back. Hopefully this doesn't take me 5 tries for this video. One thing I want to point out, though, is one of the questions was, what internal conflict is Tim struggling with in the story? And there's lots of small internal conflicts, I guess, throughout the story. The biggest one for Tim, though, is which side to support. Because he says, there's 6 sides to this conflict. And which one do I support? Do I support the Patriots or do I support the British? Okay, so we're back on page 69. We are about halfway through. Mr. Heron has asked Life if Tim can deliver letters, and Life said no, and no means no. So my father was standing too. I've made a sacrifice, Mr. Heron. I've lost a son. You know I have no love for the rebels, but this is one war I'm not going to fight. Mr. Heron nodded, and he and Tom Worrells left. I picked up the beer mugs to clean them. I wish you'd let me go, Father. Nothing would have happened to me. Father put his hand on my shoulder. Those weren't business letters, Tim. What? I was surprised. I don't know what Heron's game is. He talks like a Tory, all right, but it doesn't all quite make sense. Best thing is not to get involved with him. You can be sure any letters he's sending around aren't just about ordinary business. Now let's forget that he ever came in here. He stared into my eyes, and I stared back. Yes, Father, I said. But I couldn't forget about it. Mr. Heron had wanted me to carry some sort of war messages or spy reports or something. And that night, as I lay in bed in the loft, I thought about it. Oh, it would scare me all right, walking down to Fairfield with spy messages. But I wanted to do it, because it would give me something to boast about to Sam. He'd been having all the adventures. He was going to come home with terrific stories about being in the army and fighting and all that. And I wanted to have something to tell, too. Why should he have all the glory? Why shouldn't I have some, too? I wanted him to respect me and be proud of me, and not think of me as just his little brother anymore. I could score telling points in debates the way he did. Or I couldn't score telling points in debates the way he did. But I could be just as brave as he was, and do daring things, too. It made me angry with Father for not letting me go. It wasn't right, not with what Sam was doing. Of course Father hadn't let Sam go. Sam had run away. But it still made me angry. And thinking about it, I slammed the bed with my fist. If only I could find a way to sneak off for a day. I thought about it some more the next morning when I was milking old Prue. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. By the time I'd got Prue milked and driven out to the pasture, and fed the chickens and collected the eggs and hung the milk down the well to keep it cool, I was plain boiling. It wasn't fair, that was all. When I got back to the house, I was angry enough to stand up to Father. He was sitting on the taproom table. He was sitting at the taproom table drinking tea. I faced him and stood up as straight as I could. Father, why can't I carry messages for Mr. Heron? You're on the Tory side, too. He glanced at me and then blew on his tea to cool it. Because I said so. That's no reason, I said. He stared at me. If you don't stop arguing with me, I'll thrash you, Timmy. I don't care, I said. If we're supposed to be loyalists, we should help. He slammed his fist down on the table and then jerked his thumb toward his chest. I'll manage the politics in this family, he said. Father, Timothy, I'm going to. And then he stopped, and I knew why. He'd shouted at Sam, and Sam had run away. He was scared that if he shouted at me, I'd run away too. Tim, please, he said calmly as he could. It's too dangerous. You think that because you're an only child, they won't hurt you. But they will. Oh, wait, it's not that he's an only child. It's you think that because you're only a child, that won't hurt you. But they will. They've been killing children in this war. They don't care. They'll throw you in a prison ship and let you rot. You know what happens to people on those prison ships? They don't last long. Chloria gets them, or consumption, or something else, and they die. Tim, it isn't worth it. I knew he was right, that it wasn't worth taking the chance. I wanted to do it anyway. But there wasn't any use in arguing about it with Father. 2 weeks later, I figured out how to do it. I was out on the road in front of the tavern trying to clean the mud and dirt off the boards we laid down there in the spring when Jerry Sanford came up the road. "Where are you going?" I said. "The shad are running," he said. He held out a coil of fishing line with hooks and weights attached. "Father said I could try my hand at it." "You're lucky. Look what I have to do." "Ask your father if you can go." "He won't let me. There's too much to do around the tavern." "Ask him." So I went inside to where he was holy stoning the taproom table. "Father, Jerry Sanford is going after shad. Can I go?" "You've got a lot of things to do here." "If we caught a lot, we could salt them down." He thought about it. "All right. Go. It'd be a nice change to have some fish chowder." So we went back to Jerry's house and got another line and some hooks, and then walked down to the mill stream, which was really the Aspertuck River. There was a dam there for the mill, and below the dam, a couple of 100 yards, was a large pool. In the spring, the shad ran upriver to breed, but they couldn't get past the mill dam, and the pool was just swarming with them. We caught dozens. We had a terrific time. Father was pleased. He really enjoyed fish chowder. But best of all, I had my excuse to get away. Chapter 6. My biggest problem was getting to see Mr. Heron. If Father saw me talking to him, he'd be suspicious, and if he found out that it was me who started the conversation, he'd know right away what it was all about. But luckily, 2 days later, Mr. Heron came to the tavern to buy a small keg of rum. My father wasn't around, and Mother said, "Tim will bring it right over, Mr. Heron." So I slung the keg of rum over my shoulder and followed Mr. Heron up the road to his house, which was only a couple of hundred yards away from the tavern. We went around to the back, and I carried the keg into the kitchen and set up on the rack. He reached into his pocket and handed me a penny. "Thank you, sir," I said. "Have you thought any more about studying surveying with me some day?" "Well, I haven't, sir. But I was thinking, though, that I might like to earn some money at that job you mentioned before." "Aha," he said. "Your father changed his mind, did he?" "Yes, sir," I said. "He said it would be all right so long as he didn't know anything about it. If I just went and didn't tell him anything, he said he wouldn't object." Mr. Heron put his hand on my arm and gave me a little squeeze. "That's a lie, isn't it, Timmy?" I got hot and blushed. "I guess so, sir." He let go of my arm. "Your father doesn't change his mind very often, nor very easily." I felt stupid and looked down at the ground. "Yes, sir," he said. "I'd still like to go, though. Are we supposed to be loyal to the king?" He stroked his chin. "Not everybody thinks so." "I do, though." I didn't. I didn't have any opinion either way, but I thought it would help if he believed that I was a strong loyalist. He smiled a kind of funny smile. "You've got your brother's spirit, haven't you?" Being compared with Sam made me feel good. "I'm as brave as he is," I said. "I believe it," he said. "Suppose I did let you run some errands for me. What would you tell your father?" "I'd tell him I was shad fishing." "And come home with no fish?" "Tell him they weren't running or something. You can't always expect to catch something." He rubbed his forehead, thinking. "All right. If you come up early tomorrow morning, I'll have something for you to do to earn a shilling or so." So that night I asked Father if I could go fishing again, and he said yes. I felt sort of bad about it. It was lying, and lying was a sin. And so was going against your father. And even if it hadn't been a sin, I would have felt badly about it, because Father trusted me and I was being dishonorable. But I wanted some glory too. But I wanted some glory too much to be honorable. So Wednesday morning I got up way before the sun, when it was just beginning to get light, took my fishing line and hooks to make my excuse hold up, and walked down to Mr. Heron's house. I was lucky. It was a good day. That time of year, it could easily have been pouring rain and cold. But as the sun came up, there were only streaks of clouds in the sky. The birds were singing, and the wildflowers along the roadside were bright and gay. I felt excited in a good way, and as I walked along to Mr. Heron's, I began to whistle Yankee Doodle, before I remembered that I ought to keep quiet so people wouldn't notice where I was going. When I got to Mr. Heron's house, I ran around back to the kitchen door and started to knock. but I hardly got my fist up when the door jerked open and Mr. Heron grabbed me by the arm and pulled me in. We walked down a hall and into his study. It seemed awfully rich to me. There was a little stove there with a few coals glowing and a desk piled high with papers and a carpet on the floor, some chest of drawers. He sat down at the desk, wrote something out on a piece of paper, and sealed it up. "Timothy, you'll have to move quickly. This message has to go to Fairfield. It'll take you at least 5 hours to walk down there, and 5 to walk back. And you'll have to be home before dark in order not to raise suspicions. Have you ever been to Fairfield?" "A couple of times," I said, "with Father and Sam to get rum." "Then you know where the dock is. Now listen carefully. Just before you get to the dock, there's a road off to the left. Down the road about a mile, there's a house with white siding and green trim. Knock there, ask for Mr. Burr, and give him this letter. He'll give you a shilling. Right? Now repeat it back." I did so, and I tucked the letter down inside my shirt and left, slipping out the back way and through his pasture before I caught back onto the road. The sun was now up and was rising over the meadowland to the east. I judged it to be about 7 o'clock. The sun wouldn't go down again until around 7 at night, which gave me 12 hours, plenty of time, if I walked along swiftly. In fact, if everything went well, I could easily be back by the middle of the afternoon, which might even give me some time to catch a few shad to show Father. I hid the fishing tackle behind a stone wall, just in case. I moved at a brisk pace. Despite the sun, the air was morning cool and fresh. It was nice weather for a walking, and I felt excited, not scared. I was worried about dropping the letter, though, and I kept touching it to make sure it hadn't fallen out of my shirt. After a while, I came to the place where the road from the center runs into the Fairfield Road. I stopped for a minute to rest and to see if I couldn't find a better way to stow the letter so it'd be safe. I was trying to find a way to hitch it up under my belt when I heard somebody shout. I looked up. Betsy Reed was coming down the road from the center. "Hello, Tim," she said. "Hello." She came up to me. "What are you doing here? What's that?" Hastily, I shoved the letter back into my shirt. "Nothing," I said. "Well, it isn't nothing," she said. "It's a letter." She smiled. "You've got a girlfriend." "No," I said. "I have to go. I'm kind of in a hurry." "I'll walk with you," she said. "Where are you going?" It made me nervous having her walk along with me. She wasn't suspicious of anything, and I didn't think she would go down to the tavern and tell Father she'd seen me. But if she should happen accidentally to bump into him, she might say something. "I'm going fishing," I said. "Fishing? On the Fairfield Road? There's shad in the Millstream." "Well, you're going in the wrong direction," she said. "Oh, well, I know that. I was up there already, but there weren't any shad, so I'm going someplace else now." I was blushing from telling so many lies. Lying is a sin. "Don't you want to know where I'm going?" she said. "Sure," I said. "Going down to Horseneck. Guess what I'm doing?" It was better to have her talk than me, because it saved me lying. "I don't know, shopping for cloth." "Guess again." Horseneck was down on Long Island Sound, too, but much further south than Fairfield. I couldn't figure out what she might be doing there. "Visiting your cousins?" "I don't have any cousins down there." "What then?" "Seeing Sam," she said. I stopped dead in the road. "Sam? Is he in Horseneck?" "I shouldn't tell you that. You're a Tory. Anyway, he's not there anymore. They've gone someplace else." We weren't walking along anymore, but facing each other. I was all excited. "How do you know Sam's there?" "Mr. Heron told me." "Mr. Heron? How does he know? He's a Tory." She frowned. "Well, I know that. But he said that Sam was there with a commissary officer scouting for beef." It didn't make any sense. Mr. Heron was supposed to be a Tory. He wasn't supposed to know where American commissary officers were. Suddenly, I realized I was wasting time. "Where is he now?" "I won't tell you. You're a Tory." "That's not fair, Betsy. He's my brother." "Tim, you tried to shoot him." I blushed. "Is Sam all right?" "Yes, he was in battle. I guess I better not tell you about it." "You can tell me if it already happened, can't you?" "I better not," she said. "Listen," I said, "I better get going."